Hello, Jen Schwimmer here. Welcome to today's vlog. Today I'm going to give you an update on not one, but two ballot audits. But before I do, I just have to pop overseas just for a moment. I have some short items to share, and I will really work hard to keep them short. I know I've been talking about Israel and Hamas, the Middle East, the fighting over there, for the last two vlogs in a row, but I have to talk about it again just briefly because the two sides agreed to ceasefire, but it's been termed by some as a temporary ceasefire. I'll say more about that in just a minute. It's unconditional, which is another factor. But first, let me just give you this headline. I'm going to try to go through this really quickly. I have two headlines for you. So here's the first one. Live updates. Israel's Netanyahu warns Hamas against firing further rockets as ceasefire goes into effect. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is warning Hamas on Friday, the day I'm recording this, and you're seeing it on Monday, that his military will respond with a, quote, new level of force, unquote, if the terrorist group decides to start firing rockets into Israel again. Netanyahu made the comment hours after a ceasefire between the two sides went into effect, ending an 11-day conflict that left at least 243 Palestinians and a dozen Israelis dead, according to the Associated Press. Quote, if Hamas thinks we will tolerate a drizzle of rockets, it is wrong, unquote, the Israeli leader said, adding that his military would strike back with quote, a new level of force against any expression of aggression against communities around Gaza and any other part of Israel, unquote. Two items to pick out of there. First of all, given what they've done so far, the Israelis, I mean, if I were Gaza and if I were Hamas, I would really dread finding out what a new level of force is, considering what they've done so far. I would only add here the disparity in deaths. 243 Palestinians versus a dozen Israelis. Most of the damage in Israel was property damage. I mean, not that you could put a value on either side on human life. 243 Palestinians, I don't know why they don't just do the math, and have to keep in mind that the reason that number is so low, and most of those are terrorists, by the way, and civilians that were not able to, I suppose, evacuate a building on time, or, well, it's unavoidable when your enemy is using their own people as human shields. One of the reasons the number of dead Palestinians isn't even higher, and I mean terrorists, is because Israel warns the civilian population of an impending attack. If they're going to attack a building, the AP building that the AP is complaining so much about, they were given 3 whole hours to evacuate the building. So that's the problem that Israel has. It obviously gives the terrorists 3 hours to evacuate too. That's why so few are being killed, but that's a sacrifice they're willing to make. So now one more headline, and then we'll be back in the United States. Top PA, and that would be Palestinian Authority, not Pennsylvania. Top PA diplomat tells UN Israel-Hamas ceasefire, quote, not enough, unquote. And here's a subtitle. After 11 days of fighting, Egyptian brokered ceasefire takes effect at 2 a.m., or it took effect at 2 a.m. Friday, Israeli time. Riyad al-Maliki, that's he's from Hamas. Riyad al-Maliki, core issue remains Jerusalem. That's why, well, you have to understand why Hamas started all this, what they were trying to get out of all of this. Well, two things, one of which they actually may have gotten, at least so far, which is increased street cred with the Palestinian population. There was supposed to be an election that Hamas very likely would have done very well in, perhaps even have won outright. Mahmoud Abbas, the quote-unquote president of the Palestinian Authority, who is in, I think, the 16th year of his 4-year term. The election has been delayed a little bit, apparently. So that's one reason. But the main point is there has been a competition between the Palestinian Authority and Hamas, vying for the title of representative of the Palestinian people. So what was supposed to happen here was that the Palestinian Authority, Judea and Samaria have really been peaceful. They haven't been firing rockets into Israel, to say the least. They haven't been attacking Israel. The odd person with a knife sneaks in and tries to stab somebody, but they haven't been fighting. They stayed out of the fighting that has just been happening. They are just trying diplomatic means to hurt Israel, or to get, I guess, to fulfill their fantasy of eliminating Israel. Hamas obviously is taking much more aggressive measures, to say the least, and they want to show that their way works. The Arabs, or the Jew-hating Arabs anyways, of the Palestinian Authority, and, well, the Palestinians don't like the idea. In fact, they hate the idea of Jews being on the Temple Mount. Never mind that it's the holiest site in Judaism. The Al-Aqsa Mosque, well, it's the third holiest site for Muslims. It's not the holiest site. When Jews pray, I'm Jewish, we pray towards Jerusalem. Muslims pray towards Mecca. That is their number one holiest site, the second one being Medina. But for Jews, number one is the Temple Mount, where both temples stood. They're not allowed to pray there, in deference to the Muslims. The Arabs riot if a Jew tries to pray there. There was also metal detectors for a while on the Temple Mount, because the Arabs, the Palestinians, were using the Al-Aqsa Mosque to store weapons to kill Israelis with, and they still store rocks and things like that. That caused such an international fuss that the Israelis took the metal detectors down. The point is that the Israeli authorities control access to the Mount. There's also a dispute, which I won't go into today, of some Arab families living, or Palestinian families living in a building in the eastern portion of Jerusalem, from which the owners of the building, who are Jewish, are trying to evict them for non-payment of rent. They've been there since 1948, or their descendants have been there, or both. For the past 50 years, the Jewish owners have been trying to get the families out, and not because they're Palestinians or because they're Muslims. It's because they haven't paid rent. It's that simple. It's just like in the United States or anywhere in the world. If you don't pay rent, you get evicted. And in fact, Israel has a law, I forget exactly what it's called. I think it's called the Tenants Protection Law, or the Protected Tenants Law. I think that's what it is. They can't be evicted. As long as they are paying rent, they cannot be evicted, but they are not paying rent. Point being, it's just a private garden variety landlord-tenant eviction matter. But the Palestinians are trying to blow this up into an international, they're trying to call it ethnic cleansing, that the Israeli government is trying to force them out, which is not true. And it's ironic, because the reason those Arab families are there in the first place is because in the 1948 War of Independence, when Jerusalem was divided, Jordan ethnically cleansed the eastern part of Jerusalem of all Jews. They ethnically cleansed all the Jews out of the eastern part of Jerusalem, and they gave that building, the apartments, to Arabs. Now the Jews are back. They produced a deed, the documentation. There's no doubt that it's their property. They have gone to court. The High Court of Israel, the equivalent of our Supreme Court, the highest court in Israel, is about to decide the case. So getting back to what that has to do with this war between Hamas and Israel, the objective for Hamas is to change that, to keep those families from being evicted, and to change the policies on the Temple Mount to show that their way works, to show that force works, that they can force the Israelis to do what peaceful protest and going to the International Criminal Court, so on and so forth, by the Palestinian Authority does not work. That's what they're saying, is there's a ceasefire right now. It's supposed to be unconditional. And by the way, the Hamas is holding 3 Israelis hostages, 3 or 4, I forget. I think 2 or 3, and then a couple of bodies of soldiers. And these are actually Arabs, by the way. The Arabs they are holding, they are mentally disabled Arabs. Arabs who accidentally wandered into Gaza and were kidnapped, and they're still there. So it's all unconditional, this ceasefire, but the Israelis are not going to change their policy. So I won't say I predict, but I see a very good chance that there's going to be a resumption of the fighting, because after what has happened, the Gazans are dancing in the street right now, celebrating their victory of having their whole area, having the whole Gaza Strip destroyed practically. They're celebrating, but the point is Hamas has absolutely nothing to show for what they did, and the damage and the number of deaths were much greater on their side than on the Israeli side. So they're desperate to show something for what they did, and they're not going to be able to. So I don't know what happens after that, because they'll be humiliated if they get nothing from this. They say that Israel's going to change their policies. Israel says no, it was an unconditional ceasefire. So we'll see what happens with that. I think I did end up talking a little bit more about this than I wanted to. I want to really talk about domestic matters. So back to the United States, where I have just one short domestic item, and then we'll go on to the ballot audit updates that I promised. I have two of them. This is Nancy Pelosi. As I reported yesterday, and as you probably would know by now anyways, Nancy Pelosi, Speaker of the House, is forbidding anybody to come, at least as of the time I'm recording this, is forbidding anybody from coming onto the House floor without wearing a mask. If you don't wear a mask and come onto the floor, first you get fined $500 the first day, and then after that, $2,500. And she's talking about just not allowing people without masks to come onto the floor at all. I did a little hypocrisy update by showing you a photo of Nancy Pelosi in the White House, a meet and greet or some kind of function at the White House with a crowd of people. She's standing right next to somebody, to a few people, never mind the social distancing stuff. She's not wearing a mask. But the photo I showed you yesterday, it was a screenshot that I grabbed as quickly as I could. She was turned away, so you couldn't, unless you looked very closely, it wasn't obvious whether she was wearing a mask. So I just want to put this photo up from the same event. You can see clearly she's not wearing a mask. And that's it for all my little short items. Now on to the ballot audit updates. I'm going to start with a video because there's a news report. This reporter is saying everything I could say, so I'm just going to let her speak. It's about the Maricopa County ballot audit update. I'm going to start with Arizona. It's about duplicate ballots that don't have it. Well, I'm just going to let her explain.
Well, the CEO of Cyber Ninjas doubled down on his findings that the ballot count on record in Maricopa County does not match the physical count of the ballots. He then took it one step further. Doug Logan, whose company works with some of the largest names in the financial services sector, the government sector, and also evaluated the systems in Antrim County, made the comments during the state Senate hearing. He said that the Maricopa Board of Supervisors were incorrect in their assertion that his company misread the early voting transmittal sheets and didn't account for the duplicate ballots, which is why they say the totals are different. Logan, however, said those duplicate ballots were taken into account, and it's the batches of ballots that do not have duplicates on record that are in fact not matching up.
There's actually a bottom part of the sheet right here where if anything is sent over to duplication, it's supposed to be filled out. If you take a look at the sheet, you'll notice that there's nothing down here. They said there was, I think they said there was 2 or 3 that were duplicates, but there's nothing listed as duplicates. If instead we took a look at tray number 6359, you'll notice that there's 3 that are duplicates. So while the count in here, we'd expect it to be 3 lower than what their total count was because they're taken out for duplicates. For the example that they gave us, there's nothing listed. And so our understanding, if this form is filled out properly, the duplicates should be referenced in here, and we're not finding that be the case. And our numbers across the board showed that. We took into account duplicates in the information that we gave, and it wasn't explained. So I'm still uncertain as to why these boxes are off and these sheets do not match the reality of what we're running into.
Logan said that duplicate ballots are created when the original ballot is damaged and can't be run through the system. In addition, according to the former Secretary of State and current Audit Director Ken Bennett, each duplicate ballot must have a 6-digit serial number printed on it that matches a 6-digit serial number printed on the original damaged ballot that it corresponds to. However, Bennett said they can't find the original ballots that match up to the duplicated ballots.
We are finding a 6-digit unique identifier, serial number, it says in 16621, on the duplicate ballots, but we're not finding a corresponding serial number on the original ballot that was damaged or otherwise had to be duplicated. In fact, I was so surprised that I brought the two observers from the Secretary of State's office over, along with some other volunteer observers from various parties, just to kind of document that we're running into batch after batch after batch of ballots sent to duplication, but there's no unique serial number or identification number on the ballot that had to be duplicated that should correspond with a ballot over in the has been duplicated box.
Bennett said those should match up one for one, and they should match up to the total number of ballots as a whole.
We are struggling as to how we're going to be able to match up ballots sent to be duplicated with the ballots that were duplicated if one of those, the originals, are missing that 6-digit number.
Welcome back. Now, the next item, this is also from Arizona. This is, I guess you'd call it a flop sweat update. I've been doing a few of these. That's what I call it. That shows how frightened Arizona election officials are. Arizona's top elections official tells Maricopa County to get new election machines. Arizona's Secretary of State on Thursday warned the state's largest county not to try to use election machines that are being audited, or she would decertify the equipment. Quote, I have grave concerns regarding the security and integrity of these machines, given that the chain of custody, a critical security tenet, has been compromised and election officials do not know what was done to the machines while under cyber ninjas' control, unquote. Arizona Secretary of State Katie Hobbs, a Democrat, of course, wrote in a letter to Maricopa County officials. Cyber Ninjas, in case you don't know, that's the organization, the company that is conducting the Maricopa County ballot audit. Auditors, this would be Cyber Ninjas, have said they're following strict forensics protocols. And if you go back, I'll try to find the video for you and paste a screen, so a link at the end of this video. They publish their guidelines. You can see exactly what the process is that they're doing, plus video cameras 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So you can see everything that's happening, and you can see the ballots and where they are and if anybody approaches them. So auditors have said they're following strict forensics protocols. Quote, we don't turn on a system if it's delivered to us in a powered off state. We remove the hard drives. We perform forensics imaging with write blocks to prevent any changes to those hard drives. And we produce a bit for bit forensics copy of that particular drive, unquote. Ben Cotton, founder of ceasefire, the company leading the technology component of the audit, told Arizona senators in a meeting this week. Ken Bennett, the former Republican Arizona Secretary of State, in other words, Katie Hobbs's predecessor, who is serving as the liaison for the state Senate for the audit, added that immediately upon receiving the machines on April 21, the equipment and ballots were placed into locked cages and have been under armed guard the entire time since. Quote, we have not had any breaches of the cages where the ballots or the machines have been kept, unquote, he said. But Hobbs, Katie Hobbs, the current and Democratic Secretary of State, alleged that it is unclear what security procedures, if any, were put into place to secure the machines. So she's alleging, she's not saying with definite proof. And this brings us to a point that it should be obvious. The reason there even is an issue about chain of custody is because the election authorities, the Maricopa County election authorities, would not allow these auditors, the cyber ninjas, to audit the ballots and the equipment in place. The election officials for Maricopa County, they have a tabulation center. That's where the votes were counted during the election. And they said, no, you cannot come into that tabulation facility and count the ballots. You have to take them somewhere else. So they had to, Arizona Senate had to rent an arena where they are doing the auditing now. They had to knock off for a week because of some high school graduations that are scheduled to take place there. Then they'll be back. But all this could have been avoided, and they could have cooperated from the beginning too, and worked with the Arizona Senate to guarantee that all the safeguards are in place. Why did they not? Well, number one, because they're afraid of this audit. I've said this on a number of occasions, but also if it can be shown that they were informed about and were participants in the arrangement of this audit, then how could they complain later that the audit was not done properly? So I think that's another reason why they deliberately kept out of it, so that they would have this opportunity to complain later. But as I've said in the past, wait for the facts. The proof will be in the pudding, or the proof of the pudding will be in the eating. We'll see how they report, and then we'll get a rebuttal from the Maricopa County election authorities, I'm sure, and then we'll just take it from there. Now we move on to the second ballot audit update. Georgia. Remember Georgia? It's been so long since I talked about Georgia. There was supposed to be an audit of the election, Fulton County, Georgia. I've been wondering myself what's been happening with this. I did a video some time ago that a gentleman named Jovan Pulitzer, who is an expert in these things, sent out an email asking for volunteers to participate in this audit. I hadn't heard anything since until today. I got this email this morning from Garland Favorito. Here is from it's called voterga.org. voterga.org. You can go to their website to get updates on what's going on. I'll just read you the email. A Fulton County ballot inspection hearing is set for Friday, May 21st at 9:00 a.m. in Henry County Superior Court, Courtroom A, second floor of Henry County Courthouse, 1 Courthouse Square, McDonough, Georgia. Register to view the hearing remotely here. Live stream courtrooms are here. I was going to just pass along this invitation for everybody to watch, but now I just realized it's happening the day that I'm recording this. But I am putting the links in the description anyway. You can go, there are 2 links, so you can go to both of them, and hopefully, well, maybe by now, even on YouTube, you can go to YouTube and watch the video if you want to, and watch the hearing. I probably won't have time, but I'm sure that whatever happened at that meeting will be reported. And if I see that report, I will pass it along to all of you. And one more development, this is the last one, this is Georgia also. Georgia judge decides to unseal absentee ballots in Fulton County for review. A judge in Georgia on Friday ruled to unseal absentee ballots submitted in the 2020 presidential election. Petitioners in an ongoing case will be able to go to where the ballots are stored, which is the way it should be done. Go to where the ballots are. That's what should have been done in Arizona. But I digress. AMRO plans to issue an order soon that will set forth protocols governing the scanning and inspection, which will be done by county workers while petitioners and their experts observe. A group of voters filed a petition last year asking for a forensic inspection of mail-in ballots that were sent in for the 2020 election. The petition alleged an abnormal vote increase for Democrat presidential candidate Joe Biden and an abnormal reduction in President Donald Trump's tabulation, among other alleged abnormalities. AMRO allowed the petitioners in March access to scanned images of the ballots, but attorneys for the petitioners argued in court that the resolution 200 dots per inch, or DPI, was too low to perform proper analysis. The petitioners asked for images of 600 DPI or higher and access to the ballots themselves. David Sawyer, a forensics expert, testified for the petitioners. He said he identified a discrepancy in the number of batches that were received from the Dominion voting system software and the number that Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger's office listed as having been examined in a risk-limiting audit. He told the judge that direct access to ballots would be best, quote, because that's the original evidence and that's the best evidence, unquote. Duh. The does from me. That's not in the article. That's my duh. So if you quote my duh, you have to give me credit. Lawyers for Fulton County and Georgia Attorney General Chris Carr, a Republican, argued that letting the petitioners examine the ballots outside of the presence of county workers would violate federal law. They also said a, quote, citizen audit, unquote, wasn't provided for in state law. If the judge allowed such an audit, he should pick the auditing team or allow the parties to reach an agreement on which firms should do the audit, they added. Amro assured them, this is the judge, Judge Amro assured them he was largely of the same mind. But he pushed back on the notion that petitioners did not have the ability to get better scans of the ballots or visually inspect them. The parties are scheduled to meet at the Fulton County ballot storage location on May 28th. And as I said, for Maricopa County, any new developments I learn of, any results I learn of, I will pass it along to all of you. In the meantime, that's it for today. If you can spare another minute, because I really appreciate the time you spent with me so far today. I think this might have been a long one. Won't know till I edit it, but if you could also give me a thumbs up if you like this video, that would really be fantastic. You could put any comments you might have in the comment section below the video, questions, suggestions for future topics. You could subscribe. I love getting new subscribers. You could visit my other channels, my hot dog channel and my music channel, links in the description. But most of all, come back and see me again. I would really love to see all of you again. I look forward to seeing all of you again. And until I do see all of you again, bye.